To Iran now, where teachers have taken to the streets to protest a series of alleged poisonings in schools targeting young girls. Images have emerged from Sanandaj, the capital of Iran's Kurdistan province, where teachers and parents appear to have gathered outside of the Department of Education there. An earlier video purported to show a similar protest outside of another government building in Tehran. There have been several hundred suspected poisoning cases at more than 50 schools since November. And let's bring in DW's Teresa Tropper, who is following this story for us. What do the authorities have to say about this?
Well, so far they haven't said much. Like Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei said that these attacks were a big and unforgivable crime. And he said that whoever is responsible needs to be severely punished. But so far, the Islamic Republic's security forces have not come up with any details or evidence, and they also haven't arrested anyone. And members of the government were quick to point their finger towards the country's enemies, a term they usually use for the United States and Israel. And some even suggested that it might be the girls themselves causing these symptoms by being hysteric. And all of that is, of course, very hard to investigate due to the lack of press freedom in Iran. We're hearing reports from eyewitnesses saying that schools are locked after an attack, so parents can't even go to see their children. And the same is apparently happening in hospitals, where security agents arrive just shortly after the patients to take control. And what we do know is that these attacks seem to be not very sophisticated. Doctors involved in treating these patients say their symptoms point towards the use of pesticides. So something used in agriculture, and that, of course, would be widely accessible.
You've reported extensively from Iran. People that you're speaking with there, who do they think is behind this?
Well, they're also confused because, I mean, what's making these things even harder to understand is the fact that women's education, girls' education, is not very controversial in Iran. It's part of everyday life there. And in fact, at universities, women have outnumbered men a long time ago. And still, many people believe the government is either behind that or is at least complicit in it, because they say that in a country where security forces are able to arrest protesters just shortly after a protest, or women who don't wear a headscarf, or even people buying spray paint, it's virtually impossible that they don't know what's happening in all these cities around the country, and that they're not able to prevent that at all. And many even suspect it might be a way to scare these schoolgirls, because if you remember, schoolgirls were the ones that were the driving force behind the protests against the government that we've been seeing since last autumn.
Tell us a little bit more about where those protests stand in the meantime, and how this might now factor into it. Could this re-energize the protest movement? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, if you remember, what started these protests back in September was the death of a young woman that was previously arrested by the so-called morality police for not wearing her hijab the way the Islamic Republic wanted her to. And now even younger girls are being targeted in school, where they should be safe. And that's making people very angry. I mean, we've seen protests over the weekend. We're seeing protests today by teachers in Sanandaj, also in Ardabil. And at many of these protests, people are once again shouting the rallying cry, "Women, Life, Freedom," a cry that now, after these attacks, seems more urgent than ever.
Teresa Tropper, thank you so much.